Tonight's next big thing is how Colorado cities will deal with budget shortfalls. It's not just Denver. We'll look at other cities struggling, and a closer examination of why Denver's single biggest employer is choosing to share the pain with the city. Colorado's Attorney General scores a win against the Trump tariffs in court. The trade war against the world is on pause. Orphans in Colorado no longer have to pay for their own foster care. And we mark 5 years of your incredible micro-giving generosity with, what else? A new way to help our neighbors. We focus on feeding the hungry in our state. Tonight on Next. Denver is looking at employee layoffs and furloughs to deal with a budget deficit. Critics of the city have suggested that this is a Denver problem. It's not. Cities across the state are struggling. The next big thing we're watching for is how other cities make up their budget gaps. Our Mark Salinger has been talking with leaders around the state.
What we know right now is we are seeing structural financial challenges in the city that are true around the state and around the country.
When Denver Mayor Mike Johnston announced a $250 million budget shortfall over the next 2 years, he cited reasons outside the city's control.
When you see the collapse of sales tax revenue that we've seen, that means this structural gap continues to grow.
Denver has seen the cost to operate a government and provide services continue to grow, while its largest revenue source falls. Turns out that's not a Denver problem, it's everyone's problem. Colorado's 5 largest cities, Denver, Colorado Springs, Aurora, Fort Collins, and Lakewood, all say they're seeing sales tax revenues fall, fueled by economic uncertainty on the national level.
Looking at about $25 million in the general fund.
Aurora is facing a projected $20 to $30 million budget shortfall in 2026. That's less than about 2% of its entire budget. While nothing has been decided yet on how to fill that gap, Aurora leaders discussed everything from trimming department budgets to furloughs.
Employee effects, pay and insurance assumptions, furloughs, everything is on the table.
Fort Collins has slowed down hiring and limited non-essential expenditures as they see sales tax revenues slow in northern Colorado. Colorado Springs and Lakewood also say sales tax revenue is slower than anticipated, but neither are currently in budget talks.
So looking ahead, hiring freezes will start today. We'll begin the furlough process June 1.
Denver's budget shortfall is about 4.5% of its total budget. As the state's largest city begins the process to try and fill that gap, it's clear it won't be the only city making hard decisions.
The key problem here is declining sales tax, people spending less money in cities. But this is, of course, a bit of a vicious cycle. If you furlough people during already tough times, it's obviously not going to want to make people spend more money, Kyle.
And you've reached out around the state trying to get a feel for how much of this is Denver specific. Certainly there are issues that are Denver specific, and then how much of this is trickling out everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And you're starting to hear some cities say, we're looking at our savings, at our reserves. You're going to start hearing more of that as more cities start to look forward to their 2026 budgets later in the year.
All right, Mark Salinger, appreciate that. Let's bring in Marshall Zellinger now. You've been looking at Denver's budget crisis specifically, right? So city services may be cut at some point, but we also expect that city employees are going to take furloughs, includes airport workers. That's a different part of the budget, right?
Right, and the city workers at DIA know this, and they're asking questions about it. DIA, Denver International Airport, takes no dollars from city tax money or the general fund, yet those employees who work there on behalf of the city of Denver, will be among the 15,000 city employees furloughed. That's a plan to save the city $10 million. And I can count with this many fingers how much will be saved by furloughing the city employees at the airport.
Dear Den, this plan needs to be reconsidered. Where do the funds saved from these furloughs go? How is it equitable? Where is the equity? How is that equitable? These are the diary entries of some of the 1,400 City of Denver employees who work at Denver International Airport. Dear Den is a way for city employees at DIA to anonymously ask questions to be answered by someone in power at the airport. You can imagine how many questions are about furloughs after employees found out they would be unpaid at least 2 and as many as 7 days because the city has a $50 million gap to close this year.
The airport will also take furloughs. All of our staff at the airport will also participate. Every employee is participating.
This employee comment rightly stated, airport employees being furloughed will do absolutely nothing to help Denver's financial situation. DIA is an enterprise, which means it gets no general fund dollars from the city. And that means when DIA's 1,400 city employees furlough, the city will save $0. In an airport-wide email last week, CEO Phil Washington wrote, "While our budget is not tied to the city's general fund, we have historically stood in solidarity with our City and County of Denver colleagues downtown when belts need to be tightened. Dear Den, the standing in solidarity with our downtown colleagues is a load of blank. Of the 14 Dear Den entries shared with us by a DIA employee, this is the only one with a response so far. Avoid using or implying the use of profanity." That response also said the Dear Den entry would still be answered. So who at DIA are city employees? Let's take a ride through the airport. The information staff, who guide travelers, they're city employees. Others work in operations, maintenance, finance, IT, and marketing. And they're also the people responsible for responding to the Dear Den entries.
DIA CEO Phil Washington hosted a virtual town hall today to answer questions for those city employees at the airport, like where does the furlough money go? DIA saves that money, Kyle and Mark. It does not necessarily need to save that money, and it's not helping the city save any money, but DIA gets to hold on to that money.
I get solidarity, right? I get everybody shouldering the burden, but if there isn't a direct way to say the harm done to you and your family's finances will benefit the city in this way, I'd be mad as hell.
It's tough to swallow, and some of the answers have been, well, we did this during COVID like everybody else. But yes, during COVID, the airport also suffered its own budget during COVID.
We also did a lot of stupid things during COVID, for the record. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
But it helped, the airport suffered itself during COVID. The airport is not $50 million short on its budget right now that we know of.
Wow. Okay, well, not isolated to Denver, but in Denver, not isolated city employees who impact the budget. This is interesting stuff. Conversation to be continued. Mark Marshall, thank you. A federal trade court has blocked President Donald Trump's trade war against the world, at least for now. Colorado and some other states sued, saying that Trump had stolen tariff powers that rightfully belong to Congress. Three-judge panel at the International Court of Trade unanimously ruled that the president had exceeded his power by levying those tariffs without congressional approval. Trump has said trade deficits between the U.S. and trading partners constitutes a national emergency, and therefore he can set those new tariffs. The court decided that the law does not give Trump, quote-unquote, unbound authority to set world tariffs. So now, barring an emergency stay from a federal appeals court, the ruling stops the so-called Liberation Day tariffs that Trump announced against nearly every country, and also blocks more targeted tariffs against China, Mexico, and Canada. Orphans in Colorado will no longer have to foot the bill for their own foster care under a new law signed today. That law ends the practice of allowing counties to apply for federal survivor benefits on behalf of children who have lost their parents, then use that money to pay for the children's care. Colorado is one of several states reconsidering the survivor benefit system after child advocates argued it was unfair to use the benefit system in that way. They said that other kids don't have to pay for their own social services care, and that children with deceased parents often don't know that the child welfare system was applying for the benefits on their behalf. Under the new state law, child welfare departments can still apply for federal survivor benefits on behalf of children, but now those benefits have to be put into a personal account and turned over to the kids when they leave the system. Even under this new law, some children will still be covering the cost of their care. Counties can continue to use Social Security benefits of children with disabilities to pay for their foster care. This week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign marks 5 years of your weekly generosity. Never would have imagined when we started giving together as an act of community service during the lockdown period of the pandemic, never imagined that we would still be at this 5 years later. But hey, you know the deal. As long as you're willing to give, and as long as I'm able to coordinate the campaigns here, we will stay at it. So this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports a nonprofit that feeds those in need in Aurora. Aurora Interfaith has been helping Coloradans in need for more than half a century. They serve 40,000 people a year. The need is that great in Aurora. Recent losses in funding have meant that they've had to cut back on just how much food they can give to families with each visit to the food pantry. They do that to make sure that nobody gets turned away altogether. They try to give every family a week's worth of groceries to give them some breathing space, as they say. They want to just take care of their meals so that those families can focus on all of their other challenges as they work towards self-sufficiency. For Aurora Interfaith, like a lot of nonprofits right now, it has just been bad news on top of bad news. Funding cut here, funding cut there, increasing need across the board. They recently told me every week it's something. But this week, it's thousands of Coloradans chipping in to help make up that budget gap and feed families. We're doing this in collaboration with our 9 Cares Colorado Shares food drive, fighting hunger in our community. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get that link to donate. Your 5 years of microgiving, raising $15 million, proves how $5 donations add up fast. I will never ask you to give if I don't, so I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling as always. More than 5,000 of you have signed up to simplify your giving through a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. You put in your info one time, and then each month your donations automatically split among all the nonprofits we feature. You help everybody. It's meant our recent microgiving campaigns have started with more than $30,000 in donations.
Very encouraging. I am thrilled to see this.
An encouraging update on a difficult topic. Suicide rates are stabilizing in Colorado. And we explore the lost art of bookbinding next. Mental health workers in Colorado say they are starting to see an encouraging trend when it comes to Colorado's suicide rate. Colorado's Office of Suicide Prevention is reporting a stabilizing in the rate after years of steady increases. The state's suicide rate has been increasing for 2 decades, but things started to shift in 2021. Over the last few years, the state has seen a slight drop in suicides from 1,290 in 2023 down from a peak of 1,370 in 2021. So it's not statistically significant in terms of a drop, it's more of a leveling off. Advocates hope, though, that this is a sign that their prevention effort is making headway, like in Larimer County, where the Alliance for Suicide Prevention is open to standalone, free mental health urgent care. They're also targeting their efforts towards vulnerable groups like veterans, students, and the LGBTQ community.
My favorite things is when we go into organizations for a second time. And when we're back in there a second time, so often the staff are saying, oh my gosh, this was so valuable. Just 2 days after this, I was able to help my sister. Just a week after I took this training, I was able to connect my son to the care that he needed.
Full disclosure, last year, your Word of Thanks donations raised $30,000 for the Alliance in their work. The state is also expanding its efforts, partnering with a nationwide group to lead suicide prevention trainings across Colorado. Remember, if you are struggling, there is always help available. Colorado Crisis Services has counselors available 24/7 at that number on your screen, and you can always reach the National Suicide and Crisis Line by dialing 988. Well, it was a disappointing day for 2 of the best young spellers in Colorado. Both of our state's spellers in the Scripps National Spelling Bee eliminated from the competition today. Vedanth Raju from Aurora made it all the way to the 10th round before he was knocked out by the word elastadite. It's a crystalline mineral. Let's spell it together. ELLESTADITE. Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten out either. Boulder's Blanche Lee was knocked out in the quarterfinals after incorrectly spelling taqueria. I might have had a shot at taqueria.
We're tracking severe thunderstorms across the eastern plains of Colorado tonight. Chance for a few light showers in Denver and along the foothills with a bit of thunder and lightning. It's been cloudy and cool all afternoon. After a high around 68, we've dropped back into the mid-50s this hour. Storm Prediction Center has us in a marginal risk for strong storm, but it's southeastern Colorado. We could see a stray tornado. Severe thunderstorm watch, tornado watch out for southeastern Colorado. Storms are tracking from the northwest to the east and southeast and have a history of producing 1-inch diameter hail. The heaviest thunderstorms have been in Colorado Springs, El Paso County, and out on the far eastern plains. But again, we're going to monitor these storms throughout the evening because of that hail potential. And if you haven't seen rain, still a chance you could see some showers tonight. We've got a secondary round of showers coming through during the overnight hours, and so kind of a cool, unsettled pattern through tomorrow afternoon. And then finally, the much advertised warming and drying trend will kick off on Friday. Chance for showers overnight tonight into tomorrow, and then we'll pop right out of this pattern with 81 on Friday and close to 90 degrees with sunshine on Sunday.
Bookbinding is not easy. I mean, not as hard as spelling L-Studite, but it certainly is an art. Reviving that lost tradition, next. I don't know if we can call bookbinding a lost art, because there's a whole national competition of bookbinding going on at DU right now. It includes an artist from Boulder who is teaching that traditional technique to others.
Oops, this is getting caught.
Yeah, I would call this beginning bookbinding.
You know, when you start to learn anything new,
Here it comes.
you dip your toe in, the door, like the doors open, right? The
Yes.
curtain parts, and then you start to see just how big and broad the possibilities are.
I love teaching bookbinding because I love to open up that door to beginners.
Do you want me to hold on to that?
Yeah, so hold that tight. Bookbinding can be a way to put together the printed word so that it is accessible to the reader.
And there are tons of different ways to do it, which is what I'm finding out.
A collection of quotes from Schitt's Creek, from the show, yeah. Fine bookbinding is the ancient art of the book. The display at DU is called Open Set. It is an international fine binding competition. My book was accepted into the competition, so I am thrilled. I was reading the book and not really feeling excited about the Helen fragments, just because the Iliad, to me, it's a story of a lot of dude energy. And so I've kind of combined the tools of war with the prize of the winners of the war. What they're fighting over is this woman.
This way. Well, I think it's amazing, and it's inspiring to me.
I feel like I found my world and my people. These people love books in a way that I do.
Thank you.
But you're back together. At least it's done. I love that.
That Open Set exhibit is free to visit at DU through August 10th. The most Colorado thing we saw today was a bobcat turned house cat, briefly.
Well, I'm gonna see if he chases a laser. I don't know, cats like lasers.
It's not a normal cat.
The exchange between the sheriff's deputies on that is amazing. I don't know, how do you get a bobcat out of a house? I don't have a better idea than a laser pointer. That's a good try, but it doesn't work on wildcats, at least not this bobcat. Is it bobcat or is it bobcat? Anyway, it snuck into a home in Ken Carroll. Jeffco deputy tried to lure it out of the corner with the laser on its taser, but Bobcat was not impressed. Deputies left, and Bob the cat eventually walked out on its own. The laser feels like a good try.
I would have tried it.
Marilyn would have tried the laser.
Why
Yeah, and
not?
she knows more about cats than I do. I'm a little anti.
I don't know anything about cats.
You don't know anything about cats? No. All right, well, still more than me. Back with feedback next. Hunger exists in every corner of Colorado, but so do good people who meet that need every day. This week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign will fill the food pantry run by Aurora Interfaith. Funding cuts have them giving out less food than usual, and they've tightened their budget, but their hope is to be able to give families at least a full week of groceries so that those families don't have to worry about meals while they focus on the other challenges in their lives. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get that link to join me and a bunch of other Coloradans in donating. Mary says, why do so many journalists continue to refer to our airport at DIA? She said we did it 10 times tonight and we should call it DEN. Here's the deal, Mary. I've been spoken to about this quite sternly, and I do not intend to call the airport DEN. I'm going to call it DIA, and I'm going to call the Broncos Stadium Mile High, and I'm going to call it the 16th Street Mall. I'll see you next time.